Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to The Angel with Michael Conniff. That's me. We're a podcast devoted to, I guess, the money side of things, venture capitalists, angels, people in finance, private equity, you name it, hedge funds. We can squeeze a few of them in here. And I want to remind everybody before we get started that we are available on Substack. Make sure to subscribe to our Substack newsletter for both the Accelerator, our companion podcast, and the Angel, this podcast. We're also available on Spotify, on YouTube, in full video and audio. And then you can find us on every major Audible type platform, Audible, Amazon, Apple, and all kinds of platforms, not beginning with the letter A. Today we are delighted. I am particularly delighted today to be joined by Alina Doran. She's an executive coach and advisor and a close friend of mine. And welcome, Alina. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here with you.
She is so much more than just a coach and an advisor. We met completely serendipitously in a New York City coffee shop, and I guess you were sort of trying to hide. You didn't look corporate at all that day. You didn't look spiffy like you do today. But basically, at the time, maybe this is a good place to start. You were director of global streaming, I believe, at the Walt Disney Company, but thinking about leaving there because you wanted to pursue the lifelong dream of being a coach. So how did this become your lifelong dream and how did you achieve it?
I remember that day very well. And I had the no meetings today look going exactly
Yeah,
as you remember it.
That didn't stop me though.
And that's right. That cafe by Gramercy Park.
Think coffee. Think coffee. That's
Think coffee. That's right. 22nd and 3rd. That's right. I was a global director of business operations. That's right. At the time. And I was already sort of in progress, right, with coaching when we met. It's something that I'd been doing concurrently on weekends, before work, after work, lunch hour, sort of working on the certifications. And that's when I was finishing up all of the certification work with International Coaching Federation and coactive coaching as well. And what's funny is it's something that I had pushed away for years, that others told me, hinted for years that I should be doing.
Why did you push it away?
And it's seemed too risky, too unknown. And I had never, ironically, I'd never had the desire to be an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, much less. Never in my life did I desire to do that. But
were you looking more for security, more for the security of a corporate position? And you have kids that you take care of. You're a single mom, and so you had to worry about that sort of as a primary force.
That's right. This was, sort of the years in corporate life, right? Spanning Silicon Alley, startups, all the way through enterprise. It was a safe environment to play. That felt safe enough to play an experiment with my career. And I perceived this work. It really came to me organically along the way through work that on resume, like in front of the curtain, had nothing to do with coaching, seemingly. And yet,
like what?
Behind the scenes, it was, in the world of corporate finance. So I started out as a CPA in public accounting. Then I did internal audit. Then I did financial planning analysis. Then I was in the world of controllership and business development. And then most recently, business operations, which is when we met. And so my career was evolving. I had been pivoting, making intentional pivots to more closely align who I am and why I'm here in this life with what I do for a living. And every single pivot brought me closer and closer. And what was also happening all along the way, and this is how, this is Rome and all the roads have been leading here, is all along the way, I would be counted on and trusted to solve the types of challenges that were not officially in the job description, like negotiations between business leads, negotiation of policy, conflict resolution, being a ghostwriter and being a communications advisor. Like, how do you trickle down when you have a difficult message to deliver? How do we do it? What is the trickle? What sequence do we do it in? Who do we talk to and how? How do we modulate that communication? Folks will come to me for advice, for me to help work with them. At some point, a former boss was explicitly hiring me to coach them behind the scenes then coach teams behind the scenes.
And what
And
kind
then
was that at Disney, or where was that?
that's confidential. I will respect the privacy, but what I will share is
What kind
at
of company?
Disney,
I guess what kind of company would be the question.
software as a service,
Okay.
mature,
SaaS
like
company.
post
Okay.
Series D type of a mature startup. And, it's so by the time that I got to Disney, which is where I was when we met, I had joined to work on the launch and strategy execution of the Disney Plus streaming product, global launch. And so I was particularly working on the EMEA launch for all
Mhm.
of those countries, and then for the entire continent of Latin America. It was incredibly exciting, unbelievable experience,
How
incredible
much credit
teams.
can you take for that launch? Because it was pretty successful.
It was very successful.
Yeah.
I was surrounded by talented, passionate, invested people who wanted, who were really using their imagination and abilities and everything they had that they gave. And so I was in good company. It was amazing. And then what I will say is I had a vision for by the time I got to Disney, and I'll say the biggest reason I came to work there, it's an incredible company, was to be able to brag to my children, to impress.
That's a very good reason. You hear actors taking jobs as voice actors or actresses in animation for that reason, because my kid can't watch any of my movies. They're too much,
That's
they're
right.
too mature. So
That's
you were
right.
starting to coach externally, but were you also starting to do some of this internally at
Mhm.
Disney?
That's right. So I was fortunate enough, just so grateful for the opportunity to participate as a facilitator, and which was pretty remarkable that the leadership. I'm just so grateful. I was an outlier, very much an outlier in that I was in the COO world, let's say, right, in the business operations world,
Yeah.
and not officially part at all of the leadership development organization as a facilitator for teams of executives at Disney, for global executives in various divisions of the company in a program, a leadership development program. And so that was an incredible opportunity. It was yet another affirmation that this work is soul aligned.
What kind of coaching do people at Disney need?
Oh, I mean, they're humans. So it's,
Yeah, but I mean,
if we don't,
is it
it,
strategic? Is it how to is it like how to marry personal with professional? Is
well,
it is
so
it how do I get along with my boss? So how, kind of what are the baskets it fits into?
sure. So, I mean, to speak more broadly, when we talk about matrixed organizations in general, folks are looking at influence. That's typically a
Mm,
key item that we work on, and
yeah.
turning moments of visibility into career level ups. So you have this opportunity, you're meeting with teams. This is your chance to shine. It's your chance to advocate. It's your chance to get buy-in, respect, trust. How do you do that? Also one of the beautiful aspects of matrixed large enterprises is the opportunity to work across different teams and have new
I've been
positions and
looking for the beauties of large matrixed organizations my whole life, so I'm looking forward to this answer. How to work with cross-functional teams.
they absolutely exist 100%, and it's a beautiful thing. I mean, companies are groups of people, just collections of people,
Sure.
and right, and so working with teams who don't have a way of appreciating and knowing what you do for a living and why it matters,
Mhm.
and how are they invested, how is it all related, how are we all working toward the same goal, how do we acknowledge each other, how do we make sure that all of our needs, that we all feel seen and understood, and then can coalesce around a common goal, a common target. How do
So
we do that?
how do you coach that internally?
I will
In,
say, how do you
in a
coach
big
that?
in a big. I mean, this applies to a small company, a startup. This applies
Sure.
to a bigger company. It
Mhm.
applies across the board. So how do you coach that up? You know, do
So
you
it
know where
really,
coaching something up comes from? That was Steve Spurrier of the University of Florida. They would ask him, how's he going to get his team to do what he wants? He said, I got to coach him up. I got to coach him up. So how do you coach him up?
you got to coach them up. I mean, the answer is going to be the first answers might be slightly less satisfying. In it depends on the context.
Uh huh.
And so it really truly does depend on the context of what the goal is
Okay.
of the person that I'm working with. And this is internal or external, right? For some time there was some internal coaching, but really it's we're solving problems depending on what the desired outcome is. And so if that person's coming into a team dynamic and they want to build trust, well, how do you build trust? What's the starting point? And when we build trust, we are in turn building influence, right? We're building social capital. A person can know, a team can know this is a helpful person. We want to work with them. They make our lives easier. They hear our problems and they do something about them, or we team up well when we work together. Like, so a lot of the times the starting point is, what is the desired goal? What do you want?
Yeah.
And sometimes a more pointed question is, when you leave this meeting or when this project is over, what is everyone saying about working with you? What are they thinking? And so that intentionality, this is how I want to serve on this team. This is the role I want to play. I want them to know that they can trust me. I want them to know that they can come to me with problems and we will get to a productive place. I want them to know that they do not need to be perfect. I want them to feel safe to share bad news with me, right? To be the leader. I want to be the leader who folks will share unflattering things with way before they need to share them because
Yeah.
they respect you.
Now, how does it change or shift? I know that now you're doing coaching and advising that can, I guess you could call it more personal in the sense that maybe you're working with an individual as opposed to a team. And how does the paradigm shift as a coach when you've got just one person in front of you? And maybe they're there both for personal and professional. Maybe it starts to bleed into each other. Where do you start there? Where's the
I'll say, and I do, to your point, work with I one-on-one as well as group and team. And the starting point, the blend of personal and professional. The starting point, the headline is professional. Inevitably, the entire person is walking into the room, and so
Yes.
and
It's hard to separate the body from the soul. Yes.
that's
Correct.
right. And it is the same person walking into, that's right, walking back into their home or walking into their office. And a metaphor that I tend to use is one of an octopus. So when the person comes in and we start working together, they express their initial challenges that they want to work on, right? They'll say, well, I don't get respect that I deserve. I've been overlooked for a promotion, or I have a really difficult boss. It's stressing me out. It's a blocker. I don't know what to do with that. Or I am getting like, I'm about to burn out to a crisp. This isn't sustainable. Or my significant other tells me that I'm about to burn out and I can't continue like this. So they come up with, these are the challenges. This is what we're starting with. When we start to survey the landscape and understand the whole picture of what's going on, inevitably what we discover is that the problems that they come with are basically, they're at the tip of one of the tentacles of the octopus, right? And as we survey the whole animal, we realize like, oh, that's just the end of it. That's the tip of it. The tentacle is actually quite long all the way back there. And look, there's 7 more. And over there is the head. That's the whole animal. And so by the time we've processed and surveyed the animal in the landscape and understand how things relate and start digesting, start processing, those initial points that they come with, those challenges become almost moot points.
And we should
right?
point out octopi are a sensate creature.
Yes.
So it's a great analogy. And many believe that we should not be eating them, for example, because they have, then there's a great documentary about an octopus and a man, which I recommend, I think on HBO, but you use it as an analogy. So people have these various tentacles in life, 8 or more, 8 or less, but a bunch of them, right? So
Yes.
how do you get them working together?
That's a great question. What we start to really understand is, what do you want? Which is the simplest question on surface. What do you really want?
It's actually the most complicated question.
It is the most complex, and it sounds so simple.
Yeah.
What do you truly want? And
Yep.
we, through and it's whatever's called for in the toolkit. We get there in very different ways from person to person, depending on what they need. But what is really driving you? What are your values? What do you truly believe in? Not what you think you should be answering, not what others have wanted you to say, not what you'd like to hear yourself say. So sort of removing the shields and the masks, and whoever you need to be out there, here. And that's a critical part in creating, a trusting, safe container that we can do anything in and
Hmm.
suspend judgment and play in, is to really explore when you put the mask and the costume and the shield, when you leave those at the door and you're really here as you, what are you seeing? What are you
Hmm.
noticing? What's the difference between out there and in here? And that is inevitably one of the paths, that it's a key path to get to what do you really want?
Yeah.
What's driving this? What's this
Path
really
to
about?
corporate and personal enlightenment. I do want to ask you, you gave what's becoming rather a famous speech at a conference. And I'm going to let you tell us the title of the speech and then tell us why it resonated and continues to resonate to this day.
So the talk,
Don't be shy, Alina. You can say it. You can say the
don't be
word.
shy. Okay. The talk is called How Not to Be an Asshole. And it is aligned with my mission in this work. Part of that mission is what I term de-assholization of the corporate world,
Yeah.
individuals, and getting more honest, more real, kinder to self, kinder to others, be getting real, tangible, measurable business results.
Okay, so
And
connect the de-assholization with the business results. Why does that produce a better business result?
ah,
Because they just push back in a way in which is not consistent with what I believe. But
mhm,
a lot of people, a lot of executives, a lot of very successful people. You can look at Walter Isaacson's book on Elon Musk if you want an example, and there are many others of somebody who acts really badly,
yes,
and treats
that's right.
people like dirt, and
Yes.
sometimes apologizes, usually doesn't, and have managed to be successful. Donald Trump, we're not going to do politics here, but when Donald Trump has like one of the worst days of his life, on the same day he makes 5 billion in an initial public offering. He just seems to succeed despite everything and despite being pretty nasty. So
Hmm.
why is being a little nicer and kinder, are we sure that that translates into business results?
Yes. Now, and that's interesting that you talk about, and yes, politics aside, candidates aside, over 20% of all CEOs display psychopathic tendencies.
20%.
Over 20% psychopathic tendencies. So, in the how not to be an asshole talk, and the talk is where I introduce my framework. The framework is around defining what those behaviors are, which is really a combination of being unaware of the behaviors that are hurtful and not helpful.
Such
And
as what would be the typical asshole
so
behaviors you're
so I'll
referring
give you in the framework, and I think to answer your earlier question of why does it resonate? It resonates because it's built on 25 years of corporate battle scars, wounds, and proven methods
to? Yeah.
and use cases and real life examples, one after another, of the costs of being an asshole. And so, what are those business results? Well, the behavior that is unhelpful, that folks are unaware of, and that's how I define assholes in the talk, is behaviors that are not helpful that the people are unaware of. So we aren't speaking of the psychopathic type of, or the I want to see you hurt, I want to see you suffer type of behaviors. The costs are tremendous, right? You have, on the personal level, you have your personal health, your mental health, your physical health. People physically get ill. That actually becomes really expensive for companies.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's very true, and they make other people feel ill.
they make other people feel really ill, right? Your
Yeah.
reputation, your sense of belonging, your self view. When we look at an organizational, a company side, it's really expensive to hire people, to find the right candidates. And it's important. It's so difficult. When those people leave, it costs multiples of those initial costs to hire them, to replace them. And then on top of the financial cost,
Because they've done damage.
well, it's really expensive to replace candidates, right? It's
Mhm.
financially, it's painful, it takes time. And then, aside from directly, what we can directly trace, immediate costs that are financial, you have morale, you have quality of work that declines, you have the toxicity that had spread through the team. It just, it takes a couple bad apples, right? Could be the tone at the top, could be that leader that impacts the whole team, and the hardworking, high quality, promising talent leaves, and the team is shaken, right? So their engagement decreases, their effectiveness in turn decreases, their the goal attainment, whatever key performance metrics that were defined, those don't get met. Maybe revenue goals, innovation. So great ideas are stifled.
Yeah, that's a big one.
And there's a whole trickle effect of competitiveness of the company that's affected by culture, by the tone at the top, by leadership, by how teams engage, by how they silo or how they work together, how they trust or they hold back. If they have, lane grabbing and territory grabbing, or listen, ego at the door, we all want we want to get this done, and I'm going to help you, and I'm going to share information with you. I want you to succeed, and I know that you want me to succeed.
And it seems you struck a chord with this.
I did. I mean, there's and I've the talk is where I introduced the framework. It's effective. It works. It's got 5 animals, and each of the animal archetypes has a set of symptoms. And the really important thing to understand about those 5 animals is that they adapted behaviors in order to preserve themselves for their own safety. It wasn't, we're not looking to kill off any animals. We're not going hunting.
Or octopi while we're at it.
We're looking to feed the animals and be nice to them. So,
be kind to animals. Be kind to animals.
Be kind. That's right. They're here for a reason. It's about, safety. Yeah. They display certain behaviors because they've learned over time that this is how they need to act to get things done, to be safe.
Now, I'm going to segue into a slightly different place. We have only a few minutes left, but I'm dying to talk to you on the record about your experience at the New York Times, where you were did a lot of financial work, but you weren't there recently. You were there when the New York Times was really trying to figure out the paywall, subscriptions, newsletters. That's right. How are we going to find a financial model that's going to replace the print newspaper? And they've actually done that quite well, quite successfully, with a big push from Donald Trump, actually, in helping push up subscriptions. But when you were at the New York Times, it was very stressful. It was not clear that the New York Times had a future, was it?
It was a difficult time for the print industry. Absolutely. And we were working on the first paywall that did not succeed, took it down. And then the one that's up now is the one that's going. Again, a lot of
successful. Yeah.
Yes, the one that's been successful.
You were there when Martin Nissenholtz was there, right? As
that's right.
The head of the digital side. I just have to very briefly, Martin Nissenholtz and I were 2 of a very small group of people at the very beginning of the online industry and the reason I bring him up, he was a professor at NYU. He was only about 22. I was pretty impressive. Back then, he was the only person I knew in new media who was actually younger than me. So then he went on to Ogilvy and Mather and ran digital there, and then eventually the New York Times. But and I think really had a lot to do with solving the riddle. And then the other guy was Jim Thompson. He was after you, right? He came in as the CEO. Okay, so when you were there, they had not figured it out. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of intensity. So how did this? Was there a lot of assholery at the time at the old gray lady?
I would say, again, it's mission driven, people who believe with everything that they have a heart and soul in. That's right, the gray lady,
the old gray lady. So did you feel safe in that environment? Did you feel you could be honest and push back, and your bosses had your back, or was it more difficult than that? I'm not asking you to name names. I'm just curious, because this is a formative experience.
It was a formative experience. I felt safe. I felt, that we could really have, candid conversations and share. And I also felt that it was in service of, and this is, I wholeheartedly believe in, and I think that was, my brand. It's me, is the truth telling. I'm going to tell you what is in service. That will serve you to hear. It may not sound, you may not love hearing it, but you need to hear it. It's, a true friend will tell you that you have spinach between your teeth.
Well, I think there are two kinds of friends. There's the kind who will, and there's the kind who won't. There's the kind who will tell you what you want to hear. Nothing evil about that. But there's the kind, I put myself in this category, who tell you what you don't want to hear. And it's two different approaches to friendship. But just in a couple minutes we have left, what do you see in the future of the Alina Doran coaching and advising business?
Mm. More
of the above.
More of all of it. I mean, it's really expanding one-on-one offerings, the talk that we talked about, introducing that framework has been incredibly helpful. I've been running group offerings with that framework, playing really with those, and really, if people are finding it's incredible to watch the impact that it's having on people, how helpful they're finding it in a pretty short period of time, and adapting the language and adapting the perspectives, really allowing them to reflect and laugh about their behaviors. I inject humor and the occasional profanity where it's placed. And it's really been very, very useful. So expanding those offerings and to a more immersive experience, that's what's up next. There's more to come. For sure.
Lots more to come. And do you feel like you're achieving your dream?
This realm of work and motherhood are the two places where I feel I am meant to be here in this lifetime.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good start so far for a young woman like yourself. I want to thank Alina Doran for being here. She's an advisor and executive coach. She had a big job at Disney rolling out streaming in India and Latin America in particular, corporate jobs with startups, with the New York Times, and now a coach and advisor to companies big and small. Thanks so much for being with us, Alina. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful.
Long overdue. We've been talking about this for a long time. And I want to thank you out there for listening to The Angel. Make sure to keep an eye out for The Accelerator, our companion podcast. Find us on all the major platforms. Rate us, like us, and above all, subscribe on Substack. It's great to see you. And as I like to say, we'll be back with another podcast before you know it.